So Pennsylvania voting machines flipped the votes in Tuesday's election, but we're being told not to worry because a Democrat is going to fix it for us. This is when you should actually worry. Folks, this is The Brink. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you like me and you like what we do here. And if you love it, you can also become a Daily Caller Patriot. There's a link in that description below, so make sure you check it out. So big election day yesterday, and even bigger for one Pennsylvania county where a coding error apparently caused a voting machine to flip the votes on a ballot question about whether a pair of incumbent state appeals judges should remain in place, okay? One judge is a Democrat, the other's a Republican. Now, voters were alerted to this problem after it was discovered and were told, just cast your vote anyway, and then an election official can just flip the vote count later. Isn't that so nice? An election official can just flip the vote later, after the race. And we should trust these people. Why? Huh. Your answer is as good as mine. These voters should have been given an emergency paper ballot. Those machines should have been turned off, not allowed to be used, taken away immediately. But instead we're told, just keep using them. You know what the best part is? The Democratic county executive said that the issue was caused by a coding error that county election officials failed to pick up on during testing. The same election officials who will now just flip the votes around. Safe and secure elections, am I right? Thank you, Pennsylvania, for leading the way. Now, I want to ask you all a very important question. What's the point of going to the founding era? That's the same question that the diversity hire for the Supreme Court asked on Tuesday during oral arguments about a gun control case. So Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, she wants to know, what's the big deal with the history of the Second Amendment? Why should we care what men who fought and gave up their lives to create a country thought of about having the right to keep and bear arms? Doesn't it make you feel so good that a woman whose sole job is to adjudicate laws to ensure that they hold up to the Constitution doesn't really understand why we should care about the people who wrote the Constitution, right? We shouldn't care what inspired them to literally make sure that they enshrined the right to keep and bear arms, because who cares what they thought? They're dead, right? Now, she's referring to the High Court's landmark decision in Bruin of last year that said, all gun control regulations, there needs to be some, historical precedent, some historical basis. Now, this case in particular is trying to answer whether or not the government can disarm people who have a domestic violence type order out against them. So restraining order, temporary restraining order, something along those lines. And I'll be honest, I won't weigh in here yet, because I am still reading. I'm reading more historical research, and I don't want to just simply, throw something out there without a deeper understanding. But I can absolutely tell you this. The founders' intent for the Second Amendment absolutely does matter. We know this to be true. We know that they wanted us to know that, because Thomas Jefferson wrote first in 1787 that in order to preserve our liberties, including the one enshrined in the Second Amendment, rulers need to be put on notice that, quote, their people preserve the spirit of resistance. You think if the founders didn't have firearms and they had just, really strong and mean, scary words, that they could have resisted the British? We would all be speaking with British accents today if that was the case. And Jefferson went further, right? He spoke about the importance of referencing the time when the Constitution was adopted should ever a question arise about constitutional interpretation. An 1823 letter Jefferson wrote to William Johnson, and I quote, "On every occasion of constitutional interpretation, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted. Recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying to force what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, instead, let us conform to the probable one in which it was passed." But yeah, I go to bed at night feeling super safe, knowing that my right to keep and bear arms is partially in Jackson's hands. Great. Now, remember Biden's reaction when he was asked about Christians being slaughtered by the trans Nashville shooter, and he made a joke?
You believe that Christians were targeted? I have no idea. Josh Hawley believes they were. What do you say to that? Well, I probably don't then. Probably don't. No, I have no idea.
What was so funny about young Christian children being slaughtered? Biden tried to make a partisan political point at the expense of slaughtered Christians. But remember, we were reassured that our fears that this was a targeted hate crime, they were frivolous. So a few pages of Audrey Hale's manifesto was leaked the other day. One page is called Death Day, where she describes her desire to have a high death count, right? Specifically kill white children who were privileged or wealthy. She knew what she was doing when she targeted a Christian school. Don't think that the fact that this was a Christian school was just, a random attribute, a throwaway fact, okay? It was deliberate, because if she wanted to simply kill white children, look, they're all over, okay? She targeted a Christian school. And I want to talk about a trend that we're seeing, and it's because I've been reading a lot of history stuff, and it came up to me. So remember after this horrific tragedy, this is what the White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said.
And one of the things that we saw during the midterm elections is that people don't want their freedoms to be taken. They want us to fight for their freedoms. And so it is shameful, it is disturbing, and our hearts go out to the trans community as they are under attack right now.
Yeah, so not white Christian school children who were literally under attack from a crazy trans person with a gun, but trans communities nationwide. Then think of just recent. There is a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism in the United States and worldwide. People literally are going into the streets calling for Jews to be killed, for Israel to be eradicated. And this is what the vice president came out and said.
I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. This strategy will be a comprehensive and detailed plan to protect Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim from hate, bigotry, and violence.
Isn't it just so interesting how the people actually under attack are ignored? And this isn't a new trend. Now, I was reading something last week that really struck me. So, not sure how many of you are familiar with Nat Turner, but he was a slave and he gathered other slaves to launch a slaughter against whites. They called it an insurrection, a rebellion. He slaughtered white people, okay? And they didn't discriminate between children, men, and women. They killed them all with hatchets and knives and blunt objects, okay? We're talking truly horrific, gory, unjustifiable deaths. Then there was this man, an abolitionist named William Lloyd Garrison. He ran The Liberator. It was this, anti-slavery paper. And he published this after what he calls an insurrection. The slaves need no incentive at our hands. They will find in their stripes, in their emaciated bodies, in their ceaseless toil, invitations to resistance above, below, and around them. What more do they need? We are horror-struck at the late tidings. We have exerted our utmost to avert the calamity. We have warned our countrymen of the danger of persisting in their unrighteous conduct. Do you hear that justification? Dozens of people got slaughtered brutally, but it's actually their fault for their past actions, right? Even the children who were young enough to possibly not even be able to read, who literally did nothing wrong and don't understand what's going on, their heads were chopped off because they were also to blame, right? This isn't a new thing, except it's always somehow done in a way that ignores the real situational victims. And it is such a disservice, not only to the victims themselves, but to the public, right? Because these people, Karine Jean-Pierre, Kamala Harris, William Lloyd Garrison, they create this perception to the public that there is some way to justify these horrific and horrible acts, and there is simply no way to justify them, right? You have to be able to condemn a situation, even if your political affinities go the other way. And as long as we continue being unable to do that, you will see rise in anti-Semitism, right? You will see someone again like Paul Kessler who gets killed in California because he's Jewish. You will see that increase, and we just can't let that happen. We always say never again, and it's never again for a lot of issues. But if we don't actually actively work every day to make sure never again doesn't ever happen, it will happen. Folks, we will have more for you tomorrow on The Brink. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you guys.